Our next speaker is Laban Coblentz. As the head of communication at ITER organization, he's leading a global collaboration to make fusion power a reality for clean energy generation. His career has traversed diverse sectors, from applying mathematical models to improve nuclear safety to leading groundbreaking initiatives in the US Congress. Laban's experience at the International Atomic Energy Agency working on nuclear diplomacy in politically charged regions instilled a passion for high-tech advancements in agriculture, medicine, and groundwater management in developing countries. Guided by the three fundamental questions: what makes it tick, how can we make it work better, and how can we explain the answers to those who need to know, he has become a champion of curiosity, innovation, and narrative. He's here to teach us how to leave a better legacy for future generations, so let's hear him.
Thank you. So, look at this title. This is going to be a very strange 10 minutes. When the Webit people called me, the Webit organizers, it was to talk about this. This is ITER. This is a project in the south of France where I work, about 1 kilometer long, 400 meters wide, 35 countries working to change the future of technology with a 40-year commitment, change the future of energy, leave a better planet. But then we started talking about a bunch of other things, because I keep my hands dirty in other technologies. And the first thing you know, we came up with this: complex societal issues and how to leave a better legacy. So I'm going to start with a bit of a different sort of tabula rasa on how you accomplish a moonshot. For ITER, about energy, we would start probably with a clean energy transition. We might say that it's about climate change. But when you start to look at a lot of the scientists and engineers on the planet, they think technology will solve everything. That's the positive way of addressing it. But what about the other kinds of technology challenges, complex challenges that are important to the poor of the world, like gastrointestinal diseases? And you start to realize that no matter how good our technology is, we have to figure out, really, how to solve human nature, which sounds ridiculous because we've been basically, 1,000 years ago here in Bulgaria, what you had was a medieval culture where faith and the church dominated. So about 500 years ago, we threw off the church. We said, at this point, reason is the highest goal. Reason is everything. And if you look at our formal education, the 12 years our kids spend in school, or 4 years of bachelor's or on to a PhD, almost all of it, unless it's a very weird specialty, almost all of it is spent on elevating reason. So is it any wonder that we still carry around a legacy of guilt from religion? Or is it any wonder that when we try to actually solve conflict, we are still doing the same thing we were doing 100,000 years ago as cavemen, when we were using armed conflict as a path to resolution? And it gets worse. When we talk about modern liberal democracy, the idea was that we could vote on 15 or 20 issues that meant a lot to us. But now we get separated into blocks. I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal. If I'm a conservative, I'm expected to vote a certain way on all these different issues, right? We should be using the age of information to help us get better, but it's become the age of information overload. And so that starts to look at the things we've been hearing about today, the rise of AI. AI is fabulous, but AI does one thing nobody has mentioned today. It tends to reinforce your own opinion, because when you as an individual are being marketed as a product, and people are looking at what is your real digital self. We've all got one. If I look at my own, I can say, okay, my name's Laban Coblentz, but then I can look at a bunch of other stuff. Okay, advocate for advanced technology, I'm a father, I'm a consumer, I'm an old white guy, yeah? So gender, age, etc., get into that. I grew up American, but in a weird environment, Amish Mennonites. The bots know that. So they will use this to characterize how, in fact, you should really be marketed to. I would say humans are half evolved. We're about halfway through a transformation in our species, away from Homo sapiens. How many of you have your hands on your iPhones? We are already all androids. We are already all depending on our phones for things we didn't depend on a very, very long time ago. So what does that mean? There's never been a species like the current human, where if you look at the 3 stages of an animal, the larva, the pupa, and the adult The pupa, teenagers, are better at the latest technology than the adult. That's strange. And the larva is actually better than the pupa. The only thing that is keeping kids from being better at AI is that they haven't added the voice app. Kids before texting, I guarantee you, would do better at AI than the puberty guys. If I had time, I'd go into it. So the plasticity of young minds without the counseling and maturity leads us to, inevitably, an anxiety epidemic. If you want it to be worse than that, it's an opioid epidemic. And how do we treat that? We say, oh, we've got a war on drugs. Anxiety also leads to terrorism in divided societies, so a war on terrorism. This is how we address our issues. Maybe righteously, a war on poverty. Maybe we should be making a war on war. And what does that lead to? Basically, a short attention span. You're seeing so many different things to talk about, so many things to interact with, that it becomes very difficult. You start to put things in boxes. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Depending on what discipline you go into, you say maybe art should be driving the science narrative, or maybe it's science that drives art. And maybe you get to a point where this moonshot goes from technology being positive to technology being evil. Welcome to the apocalypse. Now, that's the negative side. I will guarantee you that I'm an optimist, and I will actually advocate that to all of you. Hang on to your iPhone, because if you don't have your iPhone, you're still going to be transitioning strangely into the next piece. But Alberto, the previous speaker, talked about COVID-19. 3.5 years ago, the best estimate of how long it would take to get a vaccine was 4 years. And the governments of the planet decided that was such an economic impact that they would pour $94.5 US equivalent into finding a result. And 9 months later, we had several miracles, all the different vaccines. So we can do it. So welcome to the innovation economy. The critical factor will be, how do we view the other, the person who is unlike myself? And how do we learn to understand the human narrative? So I'll use the remainder of my time to talk about ITER as a case study, with all of that as being our sort of backdrop. How do we talk about this massive project? This is a photograph from the front of the site. Look at that. You see China, the flag of China, flying right next to the flag of Europe. You see Russia's flag next to the United States. Where else in the world do you see that? Maybe the FIFA World Cup or the United Nations, but here, there is a machine, arguably the most complex machine humans have ever built, more than 1 million components being sourced on 3 continents, over 40 years of collaboration commitment to make this thing work. So what is fusion? Here comes the nuclear physics lesson. All the nuclear you know right now is fission, a couple of 100 kilograms of uranium or plutonium making energy, right? Fusion in the universe, fusion is why you're all here. All energy comes from our sun, and in the core of the sun, hydrogen is compressed together by gravitation. So we've been trying to figure out, how do we build a sun on Earth, right? Not possible, but we've been working on it, and the goal here is to get to fusion on Earth, in which, in the way we're doing it at ITER, you take a donut-shaped massive vessel, this is 30 meters across, you put 2 forms of hydrogen in, just 2 to 3 grams of hydrogen, you run a current through it, so it all becomes subject to magnetism, except the neutron that carries the energy away and will produce energy, produce power. So you heat it then to 150 million degrees, 10 times hotter than the core of the sun. And yes, it's already been done. What are the advantages? It's safe. It's baseload power. You could put it next to a city. It's carbon-free. The energy supply, the fuel is in water, so you can have it for millions of years. All great. It's just that the engineering is super hard. So in 1985, when Reagan and Gorbachev were trying to reduce their nuclear weapons arsenals, they decided they wanted to do something peaceful. That was ITER. That's when it was born. It took more than 20 years to get to a point of actually designing the machine, signing the agreement, picking France as the location. And now, all of these companies from the US, from China, India, Russia, et cetera, are all trying to build this machine. So if you look at just the magnet system, there's a human in that illustration. That central magnet made in the US, we've got 2 modules already arrived. The third one is right now in the Gulf of Mexico somewhere, heading toward Marseille. That will be a 1,000-ton magnet, the most powerful ever built. It will be powerful enough to lift an aircraft carrier. Think about that. So if you put the orange magnets there, those are made in Japan and Italy. If you look at the others, they're the round ones. These are made, I'll show you some photos in a moment. These are made in China, Russia, and in Europe. And if you take the whole machine, again, very, very simplified illustration because there are more than 1 million components. It's made on all these different countries, including Bulgaria contributing. So when COVID started, we thought about closing down, but we had this instead. So we decided to keep going. This is an Indian-made component, about 30 meters in diameter. That crane's got to carry it down and put it into this thing we call a tokamak pit. Here's the top-down view. You see those lines? Those lines are illustrative because that was Indians supervising German welders under French nuclear regulation on an international site, and they managed to get a 30-meter component all set within 3 millimeters of tolerance. This is the next piece, the one on top. This is the next, where the China-made magnet, that weighs about the same as a 747 jetliner. That circle in the middle, that got put in the middle, around on top of the base. Then a European, a French-made magnet got put in. Since then, last May, we were putting this 40-degree segment, 1/9 of this circle, in there. And this is what it looked like installed, 1/9. And yet, here's the second key to combating the apocalypse. We made a mistake. All right, we found, in fact, that these little pipes had some corrosion. So this week, we're in the process of taking that thing back out and disassembling it. But here's the really cool thing. Industry is booming. It's working like a private-public partnership ought to work, meaning that we've got more than 90 other fusion projects going, and about 40 of them are private sector. 10 years ago, there were maybe 5. In addition, there are a lot of spin-offs that are introducing things in medicine, in industry, in other forms of energy, et cetera. So it's a lot of basic science that is influencing everything else. That is, in my mind, how we try to take a given issue, put it in the context of a complex societal situation, and leave a better legacy for future generations. Thank you very much.